Yo, what up, Street Dogs? Eric Kim. Alright, the thought. This one is on the hacker ethos. So, just a little bit about myself and my life story. So, for me growing up, I was actually grew up pretty poor. I mean, single working mom. Dad is kind of like a degenerate, deadbeat, whatever. And I didn't grow up in like uber extreme poverty, but, essentially poor enough where it's okay. Nice doggy. He's like, I want to play. Bud, go back to mommy. So essentially, it was, I kind of grew up in a situation where, didn't have any money and stuff like that. And actually, as a kid, computers were the best thing ever, in the internet and stuff like that. And for me, I was born in 1988, and I still remember my first computer. It was an Acer Aspire, Pentium MMX technology. I had like a 1 gigabyte hard drive, and it had a 38.8K modem, did the whole AOL net zero thing, whatever. And for me, the reason why this was so great being a kid is that, when you're a kid, you don't got no money, you can't, and then even from a young age, I tried to get a job, but, typically no one hires 12-year-olds to do work, and so it's hard to get paid. And so, in the early days, I was definitely an internet pirate. Like 12 years old, I was able to use the AOL Wares, WAREZ, figured out the WinRAR stuff, and I still remember pirating my first version of Grand Theft Auto, like the original Grand Theft Auto, the POV, like super basic stuff, and it was so freaking complicated to do. And actually, down the line at UCLA, I worked at the UCLA undergraduate admissions, I worked in IT and stuff like that. And actually, like, even for myself, I'm actually pretty good with computers and IT and stuff like that. And, I don't know how to code or anything like that, or program, but I know enough HTML and basic stuff in CSS to just kind of get me by. And so for me, it was more of like not knowing technology for the sake of technology, but you had a certain desired outcome and you wanted to hack, modify, and change things to make it the way you want it to become. And so even with technology, my personal ethos is give the maximum amount of optionality and control and customization to the user, and to really empower the user. And so for example, Google, these sneaky bastards, right? Like, I mean, I'm technically pro Google and pro these big tech companies, whatever, but if you work at Google on the Chrome team or whatever, I think it's fine that you create these options to just like automatically opt the average user into doing X, Y, and Z. But to me, like, at least give the user the option to disable stuff that you might find annoying. So for example, I think it's fine that, Google collects, data in order to serve you more accurate ads. I think that's fine. That's their business, right? But I think that Google, my suggestion is just enable that by default, right? But at least give the user the option to list themselves. And then the funny thing is that there's not really going to be a huge financial backlash because the average user doesn't really care or whatever, but then at least let the power users, give them the ability to opt out. So like, even one thing I found so annoying with, I'm like, I love Google Maps and I think it's essentially the killer app for Android or Google, whatever. But I always hated that every time I, do any kind of trip, at the end there's always that annoying like, oh, please rate your trip, and then there's like a bunch of different happy faces from sad to happy. And then I haven't really figured out a way to disable this. And even though Google Maps is like amazing, I'm like, fuck, should I just get just get an iPhone so I could just use Apple Maps, so I don't have to be you know, annoyingly poked by these kind of, you know, prompts, and I haven't figured out a way to disable it yet, but maybe I'll just kind of poke around a little bit more. But anyways, and so for me, to empower the user is give them maximum amount of customization, minimal amount of annoyances, whatever. And certainly, like, at the end of the day, we all know it's a business and people got to make money, whatever. But still, let us try to give more optionality, more control and power to the users. And so my notion of the hacker ethos is kind of like this attitude or this approach or this general gist or notion where it's far more interesting to be a hacker, a modifier, somebody who could poke around and change things, than somebody who's just kind of given a one shoe fits all solution, or was it one size fits all? So it's kind of essentially going beyond the whole like one size fits all philosophy, and it's kind of giving more bespoke or customized or tailored solutions for the user. And so, I mean, certainly this is all subjective at the end of the day, but for me, like, I know certain things which annoy me, and so I think maybe part of like design ethics or computer ethics or whatever is just do not annoy the users as you don't want others to annoy you. And this is the thing I find hilarious. You know, all these people working at Google and, you know, engineers, stuff like that. Just look at what Google Chrome plugins they have. So for example, it seems most Google programmers that I know, or people who work at Google, whatever, everyone has freaking ad block installed, right? So it's like, this is, and then they have like the disconnect and the anti-tracking stuff for themselves. So I find this hugely strange and bizarre, because I'm like, yo, if your whole business is about serving ads, yet the programmers or the people working at Google are using ad blockers, I'm like, this is kind of funny and weird. And even when I was a student, all my friends who later became programmers at Google or whatever, we all had all the ad blockers and all the stupid tracking blockers and shit enabled. So it's hugely contradictory, and I think it's essentially it's bad form, where once again, and another thing too, right, is I don't know any person who works at Google who would genuinely prefer to hello. I don't know any person at Google who works there who genuinely prefers having a Google Pixel phone or an Android phone over an iPhone. Except maybe, like, let's say a handful of my friends. It looks like most people who work at Google, you know, they give you the Chromebook or the Pixel book, and they give you a Google Pixel, and then use that stuff during your business meetings. But in private, you'd actually prefer to use your MacBook Pro or use your iPhone or iPhone Pro or whatever. So once again, there's this kind of, I just think people should just be more honest, and there's also some sort of like commentary on the new you know, Apple work from home commercial or something, and then it's like everyone's using, you know, FaceTime and pretending to do business. I'm like, dude, ain't nobody using FaceTime, everyone's using Zoom. And so you're kind of giving people this fake warped reality of what's kind of really going on. And you know, I kind of get it, because Apple's a business, they need to promote their own products, but it seems like everyone's kind of doing it in this strange disingenuous way. So yeah, and we all know that, you know, towards this hacker ethos notion. So we all know that Tesla is the best car, Lamborghini is the best car, whatever, Porsche 911 Turbo, whatever, RS2, RS3, whatever is the best car. And we all know that iPhone Pro is the best phone, and, you know, Google Pixel probably takes the best pictures, whatever. But in spite of all that, to have an hacker ethos, it's like, you don't want the world to just be given to you on a silver platter where you're just like, okay, we all already know that this is the best solution, just kind of do it. And so, you know, we have all these, you know, tech people or Silicon Valley folks, you know, you're kind of agonizing over like, oh, you know, what color iPhone Pro should I get, or should I get a Max or a normal size one, or you know, what Tesla should I buy? Should I buy Model S or X or a Cybertruck or whatever, or what color should I get, or what kind of and like these are just kind of basic things. Is that like you're essentially like stuck at McDonald's and you're like, should I get a Big Mac or should I get a mini Mac or a chicken sandwich? And so essentially the downside of this kind of, you know, and this is kind of the legacy of Steve Jobs. You know, I love Steve Jobs to death, but also, you know, Steve Jobs, he was kind of more of the artist tyrant, kind of the anti-Steve Wozniak. Steve Wozniak was kind of the much more idealistic hippie, you know, empower the users, stuff like that. And then Steve Jobs was like super anti that. And Steve Wozniak doesn't get as much clout or sexiness as Steve Jobs because Steve Wozniak was, you know, he's essentially the brains behind Apple and the technological genius behind it. Steve Jobs was much more of the marketing, business, artistic, creative dude. I mean, certainly you needed both of them in order to create Apple and help them achieve what they did. But once again, the issue is the modern kids of today and people, I just realized like there's no more like hacker ethos. It's more like just go out and just buy it. And that's like so boring. Like ain't nobody know how to work with their hands. To most, you know, millennials or moderns, we don't know how to work on a car, you know, don't know how to fix a leaky roof or whatever. And so what I'm trying to promote is, yeah, let us readopt this hacker ethos notion where you're not just about like, oh, I could just buy the solution, or, you know, it seems like the goal now is just to make a buttload of money and just hire somebody else to do it for you. Or, you know, and once again, you buy a Tesla, it just works. The same thing with iPhone and Apple products, they just work, which is great, which does free up some sort of more of a, you know, mental, metabolic power to just do other things which interest you. But I don't know, I think if we as a society truly desire more innovation, more creativity, and more furthering of the human ingenuity and creativity, then I think embracing the hacker ethos is the way.